dear Sitecore family, welcome back to yet another episode of season 2 of Sitecore Tech Talks. We have Meenakshi back on the show, and in the last one of the episodes in this season, we discussed around GraphQL and mutation queries, authoring, the access to it through deploy apps, stuff like that. And today we are going a step further, where we will be discussing around middlewares, the development of it, how should we architect it, and how, like, the how and why of it, of middlewares. You could build it in multiple ways, and how great that you're going to hear from an expert. She has worked on a couple of middlewares that I know of, others I don't know of. So welcome back to the show, Meenakshi.
Thank you so much, Varun, for having again on your show.
Yeah, so well, let's just jump right into it. So of course we discussed about GraphQL, we discussed about different queries, but eventually it is basically a pathway to create structure in Sitecore XM Cloud. But if you want to do it, like do you deploy that project onto XM Cloud?
Whenever
you write a C# code where you do everything, right? But then you deploy it on XM Cloud.
No, of course not, because when you are working with composable, you have things that this is the thing you will get, this API you will get from the system. So the thing which we all are aware of, or we are working as in Sitecore developers, C# developers, there will be middleware in picture. From the name itself, you can get to know that middleware is something where the custom logic, or because the API will have some limitation that this is way it is giving you the data. If you wanted to massage some data, or you want to filter or add some logging something to your data,
add
then
more business logic.
Yeah, correct, exactly. So in that case, the middleware will come in your picture, and where you will add your C# code and everything. This GraphQL queries where you wanted to execute. Again, the GraphQL queries are possible. It is possible that we can add it on the front end side as well, like on the Vercel side. But for mainly backend logic, there is middleware where you will be adding all those logics.
So the middleware that you say, what kind of an application is it? I'll give you an example. So of course if I say XM Cloud, right, it's a SaaS product, it's an application in itself. This middleware is not going to be a project which is deployed on XM Cloud. It's going to be a separate piece, right? So what kind of app is it that you put in?
So now all composable in picture everywhere. So we wanted to have modern approach with C# and all these things. So normally when we are working with XM Cloud, we prefer the Azure Functions. So that would be your, you would be writing Azure Function on your C# code, and this would be deployed as in function in your Azure repository, or Azure wherever you have subscription. So it depends whether you wanted to create different functions, Azure Functions, or you wanted to have all in your one.
In one function.
Yep, correct.
But I believe Azure Functions is not the only way.
Of course, yes, yeah. So there would be always different ways. It depends on your logic, what is requirement of your project. So depending on that, you can have Azure Functions, you can have Azure Web Jobs that we traditionally also used to had. So those Azure Web Jobs you can have, and then depending whether that would be your function you are working with, it would be a quicker one. So if it is it would be finished within 1 minute, 2 minutes, that would you will use the Azure function. But in case you have complex logic, or it would take more than 10 minutes, ideally if it is completed in 10 minutes, you should go for Azure function. If you think that it is something like web job, or you wanted to trigger it via your queues and messages, then you can have that way also. Or you can have these Azure durable functions, which is similar to your function, but in case if you wanted to run it for longer duration, then this durable function would help you out.
Okay, so longer duration, so durable functions makes a lot of
Great
sense.
logic.
Sure. So so technically then what we would need to do is basically we will need to let's take an example probably,
Of course.
to understand it better.
Yeah.
Let's say, what example would you like to take?
Any example, like in day to day, what projects we are working on, or like anything you can take. You wanted to have some stores in your business, you want to
Okay.
execute those. If you wanted to fetch some data from PMS, you can take that, or
Let's
like
take
anything.
it. Let's say it's a property management website.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different properties, of course. So as we have CMS for content, there will be PMS for property management, right? So there are different such applications where the property specific data is maintained, right? So what I do is I'll just give a little bit of uh, you know glossary to the community, so that then they can also connect with it. There might be different properties data mapped in a given PMS, and then of course the properties will have different type of units, which is maybe studio apartments, and
Yep.
maybe 2 bedroom apartments and en suites, right? And then there are by different floor plans, which could be like, let's say, a bronze studio, a silver studio, gold studio, maybe a golden suite, platinum and diamond en suite, and maybe a shared 2 bedroom apartment or a 2 bedroom condo, right? All these kind of
Yep.
floor plans would be available, and then out of the combination of this unit types, as well as with the combination of those floor plans, different units might be in picture, which can then be sold or rented to different people. So I think from a structuring perspective, this is good. Let's say, for example, we are building a website for a business who is into property management, and in that case, what happens is we want to curate all this data onto the CMS, because these PMSs generally, or any other third-party applications, if you are directly taking content out of them, that content might be too much, which is like notations of the business and not very much website friendly.
Correct.
Right? And we want to, of course, along with managing the property data and its booking and its all other pricing and all other things, what we also want to do is we want to make sure that end of the day, the website user is having data which makes a lot of sense to that user.
Correct.
Right? So we would of course build out a structure in Sitecore of whatever is like on need basis into Sitecore. Let's say I'm implementing a few API endpoints of that PMS. I'm getting the properties, I'm getting the unit types, I'm getting the floor plans, I'm getting the units, and I'm curating a structure in Sitecore. Now, how do I use, or what is the recommended approach in building a middleware for doing this, right? So I have the API structure, I have the PMS, and now I'm going to look at it, the other part of it, which is doing things inside Core.
Yep. So, like, what we are discussing in the first podcast, also we discussed like if you wanted to create, update, delete data. So all this will come into the picture. So firstly, whenever you have any third-party systems, I guess there could be limit that you don't want it to hit it every time, or there could be rate limit, because on website it would be again. So in that scenarios, you'll have your middleware in picture. That okay, you wanted to do some custom logic, you wanted to get some data and update those data into the Sitecore, because Sitecore anyway you will be have full control over your data, and you will be able to show it on website however you want it to show.
Correct.
So the first thing would be which APIs you wanted to consume, how much data you wanted to add into your Sitecore. You wanted to you have to like first select the template structure that we always the first step in Sitecore is work with the templates. So which template you wanted to define for this thing. Once your templates are defined, where you want to put this data, whether it would be your shared data or your site specific data, that depends totally on the business requirements and how the brand is working. If whether you want it, if it is like something which is shared across all the brands of that particular business, you would be keeping it in the shared website. Otherwise, it would be your brand specific data. And once everything is finalized according to this, now you have to figure it out, because the one thing while working with the composable structure is wherever you are working with data, whether you are fetching the data or you are like pushing some data from one server to another server, there would be a certain cost for everything. So you should be mindful, like you should minimize the number of calls to server. So if like you have from one PMS you are getting the data, so better is to get data all together in your middleware from all the calls, or if you are getting it via one call or multiple calls. Once this data is available, make sure that you are organizing is according to the Sitecore structure, so that in one go you can just push it to the Sitecore side. Because if you like keep on repeating like for one template, if you are making 3 calls, so that would again ultimately somehow impact on the cost side. So better is
it's possible to do it, but it is recommended not to do it.
Yes, it is like kind of best practice. Try to avoid the multiple calls on any server when you are working with the composable structure. So define your structure according to like how many GraphQL queries you want, how many like whether you want to cache something. If it is cached, and then it is like optimized solution for you according to the requirement, and then make a call to the Sitecore side. And from the Sitecore side, whether once data is stored on their side, whether you wanted to go with the layout service to show the components or where it is being utilized, or you wanted to go with the GraphQL structure. That's why the structure would start.
Fair. I mean, of course, it is good to say that not to fire multiple GraphQL queries into the preview side of it. So that, I mean, good to do it in lesser number of queries, because I think time and cost both might come into picture here. But does the query complexity come into picture? Like, what if I have that big a query, that could it be possible that it fails on the XM Cloud?
Yes, like when we used to work, this is like mostly we face this issues that the query becomes too complex, and we have to, while building itself, we have to be very mindful, like whether all this data I need in one go. If not, then let's try to break that query. If that is not possible, get your query as fragmented. Like these are the best practices when you work with. You have to make sure that when it is possible, get the paginated data, because GraphQL supports anyway paginated data. If paginated data is not like the solution for your site, go with the filtration data. That would also help. And then like for example, in template you have 20 fields, but for your components you need 5 fields. So yeah, of course, that's the way.
But then what I would like to put forward is, this is mainly from a design and architecture decision perspective, wherein what we really want to do is, we want to capture data into Sitecore. How do I check that I think this much amount of data is okay, and bigger than this might fail now, might fail in future? How do you take those kind of decisions?
It depends, like when you work with the components, like I gave you an example, if you have 20 fields in template, why to take all 20, instead take the 5. Looking at the components, you will get like which particular information I wanted to have it here. And like there are certain limitations as well. So there would be complexity level, there would be the depth level, which the Sitecore recommends that you should not break. So for preview, it would, again, it is a testing thing. You can you will have the control, you can patch things or you can work on, but on edge side, once you go, there will be no like control with you. That is something Sitecore would be taking over. And with the composable things, it is like not recommended to patch the configs like earlier we used to have, whether if it is functionality is not available, we used to keep the patching things and adding our pipeline processing. But now if it is possible to avoid the patching and all this thing, it is always advisable to with
reduce
work.
complexity.
Yes, and complexity, like by default it is 20 something, and it is calculated with multiple ways. It is calculated per child, number of child you are returning, the fields and everything. So that's a separate logic that you have with the complexity.
All right. So can I put it this way? Okay, there is one more thing. Okay, so you mentioned regarding config and patching for preview but not for edge. So what do you mean by that? Do you mean that in the platform specific configuration solution that you have basically, you can add a config file with some parameters?
Like that's a debatable thing. So Sitecore recommends that do not patch anything until and unless it is necessary, because when it is upgraded, all upgrades and everything in XM Cloud is with the Sitecore, not with the us.
Absolutely.
So once it is upgraded, you will not be sure how it will behave. So it is always advisable not to patch things. But if there is some certain scenario where it is not feasible or it is not working without patching, you want to alter some Sitecore values, then in that case you might have to patch.
Sure. But of course it
is not recommended.
It is just still preview.
Yes.
So technically, the reason I am putting it forward is I like from one of my learnings I can tell you that we used to say don't hide your performance issues under caching as a rug, right? So if it is a performance issue, go ahead and make your components build better.
Yes.
Don't just cache it and say, hey, it is solved.
Yep.
It might get better, but under the rug it is not solved.
Yeah, and
I
like
think similar to that probably. Sorry to cut you off there, but
Sorry.
I think similar to that probably is this config setting, that if your query is complex, don't hide it under the rug of a config patch, because eventually it will then fail on edge.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So instead make the query better, make the mutation better.
Yes.
So that technically the complexity is reduced, and as a best practice, as per what Sitecore recommends, things go into Sitecore XM Cloud in a similar fashion. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, absolutely correct.
All right. Well, we have been talking, like in the past also we talked about GraphQL and initially we used to have item web API in the previous versions. Do we have item web API with XM Cloud?
Again, this would be not recommended from Sitecore, that you should use GraphQL because you never know when the support from
That
Sitecore
you should use item web API.
Yes, you should not. You should go with the GraphQL approach only, because it is kind of legacy thing that you should try to avoid.
It might be deprecated sometimes.
Yes, correct.
So technically it is still available,
yeah,
but not advisable to be used because it might deprecate.
Yes.
So if, for example, if you check anything in the Sitecore documentation, or you ask anybody in the Sitecore product team, or anybody who is helping out, maybe Sitecore support team, they would never recommend going towards item web API.
Yes, exactly, correct.
Right. Okay. Well, let's say I have all these middleware builds in progress. Okay, I am implementing various API endpoints. I'm taking the data, and as you mentioned, I'm creating structures. Okay, so generally, if I logically think about it, right, like let's say unit types would be finite, unit floor plans would be finite, but property data also would be some finite fields. But what would be huge is the units and their settings. So as you mentioned about complexity, if you have to build this middleware, how would you really approach building the structure in Sitecore?
For this, first you should be aware of how much data you have. So whether it would be because some best practices which we used to have in the XP would be carry forwarded in Sitecore, that you should not have 100 children above one particular node.
Makes sense.
So accordingly you should decide, like, this would be my parent node, under this I will have this number of children, and then children under that. That way your structure is according to the best practices. If not, then have introduce one more children, so that it could be, because anyway the fetching data method is changing, that we have the GraphQL in picture, but the structure which we should maintain is according to the best practices that we used to have in the XP. So according to, once you have all the data in picture, accordingly you decide that okay, this would be my parent and children. And while one more thing, while fetching the APIs, that if you cannot have everything inside your like template, it could have multiple columns or sections, then better is to have children under that, so that it could you can have the multi-list inside that, and from multi-list you can fetch all the data, because ultimately it will have like you have everything in the template in form of multi-selection, and like this is one of the way while working with the data that yes.
So technically, wherever there is, like, if you have a multi-relation or an item which can be selected on multiple items, of course you cannot make it a parent-child relationship.
Correct.
Well, you need to go multi-list. So,
yes.
But then all these decisions, like these all are design decisions before you actually start creating structure in the content. I mean, of course you can do it after also, but then there is a lot of rework, right? Which we as developers do not want.
Yeah, so that's why once you have the data before creating template, Sitecore and everything in the Sitecore, have your structure in your mind, that this is how you wanted to build your architecture.
Cool. Well, I have also seen that generally such APIs also give out media, you know, media items or assets, PDFs, images, everything. So, does GraphQL also support creation in the background?
Yeah, of course. Whatever we used to have in the XP, we will have in the XM, because media library is one of the section in the Sitecore. If you see, there is a specific node. So if you wanted to show something from your Sitecore media library instead of CDN or something else, you will create your media items. Like you mentioned, you in your property site, if you wanted to store your property images,
precisely
that is coming from your PMS site. So you can have the media creation of media item, that too with your GraphQL, but there would be some difference while creating. So in create item, you will have one query. While working with the media queries, you will assign your item path, that this is my item path, this is how I want to create your image type, or like PDF, whatever we can save in the Sitecore side, we'll have those things. So once you try to, once you have your media query hit, it will give you a pre-assigned URL. So I mean, in URL with which you will be able to upload your data. So from the GraphQL query, you will have this your pre-assigned URL, and from pre-assigned URL, you will be able to submit your data with your C# code. That is like simple, and you have an URL, and with URL you will be sending one data.
Cool.
Like normal, so for example, image you will be converting into bytes and then sending it to the server.
Right. So technically it's possible.
Yep,
and of course achievable. Cool. Well, any specific things you would like to share from your experience that you have built, you know, a few middlewares in the last couple of years? Would you like to share anything specific?
Working with Sitecore, we always have some best practices that we wanted to discuss on. So while working your or designing your templates, first thing before moving data into your Sitecore, you should always work with how the structure would look like, whether we should add this particular field in this, or whether we should go with child parent, or we should add as in multi-list, tree list, or whatever it is. When you have to fetch data from the Sitecore, always consider like there would be one query, or we should use our filtration queries or the paginated queries that will help you to structure your project or your speed of your website to get speed up or the lesser time. That's why we have composable in our pictures. So
So can I put it this way, that initially, of course, you will be having the template structure, like fields in a template and stuff like that, but maybe create an example manually and see how everything is, and think about it from a component build perspective,
Yes.
so that your layout service can fetch the details faster,
Yeah.
or a GraphQL which is fetching that is able to fetch it faster,
Yes.
instead of having a performance issue on the components when you are returning the data.
Yes, exactly. It's all depend on how your components would be. Once you have data in the site code, the first thing would be, or the whenever you have from the PMS, you have data in your Sitecore. From Sitecore, now you wanted to utilize it for different components.
Correct.
So from that component, again you will have to take decision whether you wanted to go with layout service or you want to go with the GraphQL structure.
Right.
And if it is GraphQL, then how much data you wanted to use in that, because ultimately, if instead of getting 20 fields, you wanted just use 5 and 1 children of that, so write down your GraphQL in that way. And if possible, then whatever optimizations way we have in the GraphQL, use that.
Do it during the build of middleware, rather
Yes.
than looking at it
Yep.
on the component build perspective.
Correct.
All right. Well, this was a great discussion, and well, I hope you got information around how technically you should approach building middlewares using GraphQL queries. We tried taking an example. Hopefully, that also works. Let's make sure that we are following the best practices of Sitecore to the T, whether it is about template build, utilization in components, or following the guidelines around complexity. Because even if we have a cheat code in the preview environment, we might not have it on edge.
Yeah.
So thank you, Meenakshi, for sharing your experience and knowledge on building middlewares and the best practices around the same. And thank you, Sitecore, for giving us the the way of building it in such a nice industry standard manner. That's about it for today's episode. Thank you for watching. Cheers.
Thank you.